Hey everybody, my name is Vernon Bryant. I'm the Executive Director for the Florida Botanical Gardens Foundation, and we want to welcome you again to the Florida Botanical Gardens as part of the Great American Teach-In. We have a very special project we're going to show you, so when you come to the garden, you get a chance to experience it for yourself. There's always great things to learn and to see when you're here at the Florida Botanical Gardens. So with that, we're going to go to our project, and I'm going to introduce a very special person to you as we go forward. So I am here with Margaret Gates, and Margaret helped us to do something called around one of our ponds, all about the water cycle. And so we are here to talk about water this morning. So Margaret, tell them a little bit about what we did.
Well, the new signs were put in the aquatic demonstration area, which is in the west side of the gardens. And we had 15 signs in all, so it was quite a big project. Basically about how the pond works, why it's important, other things like the importance of native plants. A lot of good information in those signs.
And we are just, again, excited to talk about that. So this is our first sign, which talks about welcome to the aquatic demonstration area. And it also talks about stormwater and stormwater ponds. And we live in Florida, so we get a lot of storms. Hey, so this sign talks about where does the water in this pond come from. And what it does is that water from all over this site, including all of our parking lots and in some of the gardens, has drainage that goes into this pond.
Number 3 talks about aquatic ecosystems. And aquatic ecosystems are both living and non-living systems that you find in this pond. In these aquatic ecosystems, you'll find bald cypress fruit, and you'll find American alligators if you're lucky. They're here. There's great egrets. You'll find them wading in the water, and there's also the southern leopard. We have river otters, we have wood storks, Florida cooters, and also dragonflies, which are always found around water. And we've got a fun fact at the bottom. Most of a dragonfly's life is spent as a nymph, which means it lives underwater before becoming an adult. And this sign is about how the stormwater pond works. So stormwater, as Vernon mentioned, collects from parking lots, buildings, and surrounding land areas. You might see the parking lot behind the sign. Water runs off of that into drains under the berm here and into the pond. In the pond, it moves very slowly and it sits stationary for a lot of the time. You'll find the water is purified to some degree by staying in the pond. Sediments and pollutants, such as heavy metals, settle to the bottom. Some pollutants are filtered from the water as it moves downward through the soil. And we have natural biological processes that break down pollutants in the pond water. So it's a natural process, which is kind of cool. The plants absorb nutrients such as nitrogen and heavy metals from the water and soil. And eventually, if the water is high enough, the water will move from this pond into McKay Creek, which is to the east of us. So as we continue around the pond talking about stormwater and talking about ponds and water in general, one of the things about stormwater is that it contains lots and lots of pollutants. One of the saddest facts is that up to 90% of the stuff that's floating in oceans comes from places like your backyard or your neighborhood, where trash like bottles and cans and stuff gets flushed into the storm drains, and then it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico, and then it ends up in the oceans. So part of what you can do is to make sure you don't litter, and that you also pick up behind others who do. So it'll really help us all, and it'll help our oceans stay strong and healthy. The other thing about stormwater is that it does contain lots of stuff that's not good for the environment. And that's another reason why the stormwater pond, as Margaret talked about earlier, letting the water stay in the pond for a while and letting it slowly let all of that pollution settle out and remain in the pond before it goes either into our groundwater or before it goes into our waterways like McKay Creek, which you referenced, that runs through our property here. You know, one of the things about living in Florida is that we have lots of things that
didn't originate here, plants and animals that have become exotic invasives here in Florida. What that means is that these things came in and they're actually taking over and they're actually causing all kinds of problems for our native wildlife. So here in our pond, for instance, one of our exotic invasives is something called water lettuce. What about you, Margaret? What do you know about it?
Well, an invasive that's often mentioned and actually much hated amongst naturalists is the Brazilian pepper tree. It pops up everywhere and it's a constant battle.
Yeah, that's the thing that has the little red berries,
Right.
and it makes really big trees. You see them all over the place, especially on highways.
Right.
You know, another one that they talk about is the Burmese python, which is down in the Everglades. You know, that big, huge snake
Right.
that is permanent there.
Right. In fact, I think they're having python hunts now and again just to help get rid of them, eliminate them. And they're supposed to be moving further north too, which isn't a good thought.
Right.
Yeah.
What about, you got another one?
Well, another one, a plant that is an aquatic plant found in water is hydrilla. And hydrilla, over here, it was introduced to the United States as a plant for
Aquariums?
aquariums,
Yeah.
right? And so it was brought in, and then it was actually put into ponds to have it grow in the ponds. And now it's an invasive and takes over natural areas and actually chokes out native plants.
Yeah. Another one, in the background, every now and then, you'll hear some birds squawking. And those are actually parrots, which are also an exotic invasive that came here as part of the pet trade. Another really interesting one that we have out in the Gulf of Mexico is a fish called the lionfish. And it actually is causing lots of problems out in the Gulf of Mexico and in the oceans.
Right.
You got another one?
I have a feral hog. Feral hogs are invasive, and I mean, some people might think they're cute, but they're definitely invasive.
You know, going along with feral hogs, also feral cats are a problem in a lot of places
They are
too.
a problem too.
So
Yes.
just lots of things. So what we want to do is, you know, try not to bring stuff into our environment and release it. So if you have, you know, an aquarium, or if you get a lizard or something for your, you know, birthday and you're taking care of it, don't let it go in the wild, because a lot of those things then become exotic invasives and harm our environment.
Exactly. This sign number 8, is about swales and berms. Kind of strange words. And I'm going to cut to the fun fact first for this one. Swales and berms are literally as old as the hills and have been used to control water flow for centuries. So basically, swales and berms control water flow. The swale is a ditch-like depression in the ground. And the berm is the raised area, often a walkway, and I'm standing on a berm right now. So the swales and berms control water. Obviously the water flows off the berm into the swale. It sits in the swale, and the swale acts as a water treatment center. So it's like a stormwater pond, but it's a continuous ditch.
Hey, so, you know, in a stormwater pond, part of the thing is that the ponds have to have a mechanism to allow excess water to flow out. So if we get a really, really big rain, or if we have a hurricane and there's lots and lots of rain, there has to be a way for the water to be controlled. For the most part, we want to keep the water in the pond as long as possible. But in a really big rain event, we're going to let the excess water flow out. And so that's done by something called an outflow structure. And it's basically, when you look at a pond, it's usually a big concrete thing with a grate on top. And if you can imagine, when the water gets to the top of that concrete box, it'll flow in, and when it does that, it flows directly out into, in our case, McKay Creek. So the good thing about you also want to help, we need to help make sure that those pond structures remain clean and clear so that the water flows properly. So not something that you're going to do, but it's something that the people that maintain ponds will have to do. Everybody, one of my favorite plants is the bald cypress. And the reason it's called bald cypress is because shortly in our area, the plants will lose all of their needles. And so they'll be actually bald, kind of sort of like me. And It's a great plant because it grows in ponds and along the edges of water. So it is a very unique plant, a very special plant, a very beautiful plant. Another really fun thing about bald cypress is that they have these protrusions that grow up out of the ground, and they're called knees, like your knee, but they're called bald cypress knees. And scientists are not quite sure what they do, but we think it has to do with exchanging air and oxygen when the plants get underneath water. So bald cypress, come and see the great stands that we have out here.
This sign is about native aquatic plants and how they are wetland wonders. They're very important to the health of the watershed, and we list the reasons here. One of the things they do is filter pollutants out. So they're a natural way, again, of cleansing the water that is sitting in the stormwater pond. And we have pictures of some of the natural, these are aquatic native plants, meaning they live in water or around water. Pickerel weed is commonly found. It has a nice purple flower. String lily, we have a bunch behind me in the water over there. And then underwater we've got tape grass, and right on top of the water we have giant duckweed. So those are a few of the aquatic native plants that we have. Very important to the health of the stormwater pond.
So we're at sign number 12, and sign number 12 talks about why the stormwater pond is important. So why is the stormwater pond important, Margaret?
Well, we've mentioned some of the reasons already. The stormwater pond helps to clean water before it flows into McKay Creek, which McKay Creek eventually will end up in the Gulf of Mexico. So very important that the water is as clean as possible before it gets into McKay Creek.
Another one is that it's important for wildlife. We have all kinds of great wildlife that live here, and when we have stormwater ponds, even the one in your backyard or in your neighborhood, is going to support all kinds of Florida wildlife, birds, fish, turtles, all kinds of stuff.
Right. Another reason too, a stormwater pond prevents flooding, helps flooding anyway, because it controls the water, keeps it deeper rather than spreading it over a general area. So it's been used for centuries to control flooding.
Yeah, and I see one here too. It can be really pretty, so it adds to the beauty of where we live at here in Florida. So there are great things that you can do to help prevent pollution and to protect our natural waterways, such as only rain down the drain. So if there's storm drains in front of your house or in your neighborhood, don't let anything go out on those drains.
Okay, I'm going to go for rain gardens. Rain gardens are a way that home gardeners can create their own mini stormwater pond in their yard. Water flows into the rain gardens, they stay in the rain gardens, and then the water is somewhat purified by the plants that are in the rain gardens.
And the last one that we'll talk about is that each of us has a responsibility to manage the water that we use responsibly. So one of the things, like for instance, talk to your mom and dad about their irrigation system. Make sure they're not, letting the water run, when it's raining.
Right.
Another one is just, make sure that, you're not letting excess water sit in and around your yard that can, contribute to mosquitoes and those kind of things. And don't when you're brushing your teeth, turn off the water.
That's right. Absolutely.
So the last sign is
the water cycle or hydrologic cycle.
And this is something that you need to learn in class. It's about what happens with water in our world. And so it starts off as water.
And then you would have evaporation. So evaporation is when your liquid is changing into water vapor, which is gas.
Right, and that happens because it gets heated up by the sun.
Right.
And then as the water that water vapor rises in the air, it actually gets cold again.
Right.
And what happens then?
Then it condenses. That's another big word.
Another big word.
Yeah, and the condensation is when your water vapor turns back into liquid. So it's like rain.
Or snow.
Or snow, or ice.
Or ice, all those kind of things.
Or even fog.
Or even fog. Then when the water changes in the atmosphere from gas to liquid, it's, we talked about rain, snow, precipitation. And it hits the ground, and then what happens when it hits the ground? It goes...
It runs into rivers, it goes underground again, so it's back to the beginning.
Or in our stormwater pond.
Oh, yes, absolutely, into the stormwater pond. Right.
That's why it's called a cycle, because the water goes around and around and around,
Right.
like a wheel. So the final thing is that water matters.
Water
It
absolutely matters.
You know, and so if you want to, on our website, flbgfoundation.org, there we have a website that talks about all of these signs. We hope that you will also plan to come to the Florida Botanical Gardens and see the signs themselves and see our stormwater pond and all the other great things that we're doing here at the Botanical Gardens. Maybe by the next time we have Great American Teach-In, we will actually even have our Majid Discovery Garden built and ready for you to come and explore many new things as well.